The Holy Gospel according to Luke, as found in the 13th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
At that very hour, some Pharisees came and said to Jesus, "Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you." He said to them, "Go and tell that fox for me, 'Listen, I am casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I finish my work. Yet today, tomorrow, and the next day I must be on my way, because it is impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. See, your house is left to you. And I tell you, you will not see me until the time comes when you say, 'Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. On the western slope of the Mount of Olives, just across the Kidron Valley from Jerusalem, there is a small chapel called Dominus Flevit. The Latin name means "the Lord has wept." And it comes from Luke's Gospel, which includes 2 stories of Jesus weeping over the city of Jerusalem. According to tradition, it was on this site that Jesus stood and wept over a city that refused to accept his ministry. On the front of the chapel's altar is a mosaic of a white hen with a golden halo around her head. Her red comb resembles a crown, and her wings are spread wide to shelter the pale yellow chicks that crowd around her feet. There are 7 of them, with black dots for eyes and orange dots for beaks. The chicks look happy to be there, and the mother hen looks ready to spit fire if anyone comes near her babies. The mosaic is rimmed with words in Latin which call to mind today's gospel. How often have I desired to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. David Losey, one of my favorite preaching theologians, believes that there are at least 2 kinds of courage. The first is the immediate and situational courage of a person who is in a moment of extreme need, summons the courage to face an imminent danger. This is the courage of the bystander, who pushes someone out of the way of oncoming traffic, or jumps into a raging river to save someone struggling to swim, and does so at great risk to themselves. The second kind of courage is the courage displayed not simply in a single moment or act, but in anticipating a significant, even frightening challenge and not turning away. It's this second kind of courage, says Losey, that Jesus displays in our gospel reading this week. Some Pharisees come and warn Jesus to run away because Herod is out for his blood. We don't know why they do this. The Pharisees as a group are aligned with the religious power structure against Jesus. We just know that they tell Jesus to run and save his life, and that Jesus refuses. This commitment to embrace his destiny for the sake of humanity is the very embodiment of this second kind of courage. But what really strikes Losey is the absolutely critical role that vulnerability plays in this kind of courage. To anticipate challenge and suffering and not look away is, by definition, to make ourselves vulnerable for the sake of others. And that, he believes, is important because we as a culture don't often equate vulnerability with courage and strength. Vulnerability goes with care, love, and concern, but certainly not with courage and strength. At our worst, we see vulnerability as a sign of weakness, something to be avoided at all costs. This is why our political process avoids any level of significant candor, let alone vulnerability. The process seems more and more to reward behavior that's seen anywhere other than the campaign trail we would label blustering and bullying. At our best, we recognize the need to be vulnerable to those we care about most deeply. But we don't often see vulnerability as essential to living a courageous life. And yet in this passage, Jesus demonstrates that vulnerability is essential to courage. It stands at the core of the Christian life and invites us to discover the peculiar strength of being open to the needs of those around us. In this passage, Jesus chooses the image of a mother hen, gathering her brood of chicks for protection and safety, to illustrate his love and concern for God's people. An image of unparalleled vulnerability. Wings spread to gather, her breast is exposed. She would offer her life for her young. To love someone fully and completely, according to Losey, is to be held hostage to fate. There is no way you can protect your loved one from every threat that life presents. That not only leaves you profoundly vulnerable, but promises a level of suffering that you simply would not endure if you had not bound yourself so fully to this person. It's this characteristic that Jesus embodies, and by extension, invites us to apply to God. That God becomes vulnerable to all the pain and struggle of human life by becoming one of and one with God's children through the incarnation. In addition, Jesus' choice of this image shows us that it is our vulnerability that spurs our courage and nourishes our strength, simply because you can and will do things for those you love that you would not or could not do for yourself. And so, Jesus continues on to Jerusalem, not to prove himself fearless or a hero, not to make a sacrifice for sin to a judgmental God, not even to combat death and the devil. Instead, Jesus journeys to Jerusalem and the cross that awaits him there out of love for the people around him, a mother's fierce love that will stop at nothing to protect her children. If you've ever loved someone you couldn't protect, then you understand the depth of Jesus' lament. You can open your arms, but you can't make someone walk into them. This is the posture of Jesus toward us. This is the posture of the God we know in Jesus Christ toward the world. God stands with arms wide open, longing to encircle and embrace all of creation, longing to protect the vulnerable, longing to draw us together to dwell in harmony on this planet. Luke reminds us that even when we turn away, even when we ignore God's open arms, God does not turn away from us. Like that mother hen who bears her breast to protect her chicks, God's posture towards the world is always open arms.